Hello, hello, hello. I'm not sure if I'm live yet. But welcome to the job search Q&A resume edition here on YouTube. I am doing this through StreamYard, I believe, as you can see. So I'm also just checking it out to see if it's going. Okay, I'm going to mute that. If you're here, comment below. Tell me that you're here and your name. Drop your resume questions. I'll answer any and all questions about resumes, but we can also extend this to cover letters and LinkedIn, like all of those sort of marketing documents, so that I can help you with that. So yeah, thank you. Happy Monday. I'm wearing my earrings that my daughter made for me. She's a big Taylor Swift fan, so all the clay beads, all the friendship bracelets. But she made me these earrings. But welcome again. Thank you for being here. Okay, so I do have some questions, and I'm just going to be keeping an eye out here for comments, and then on my YouTube channel for comments as well with your questions. But let me know who you are, where you're watching from, so that I know who's here with me, because that would be just lovely to say hi. I'm Sarah Curto. I'm a certified career and leadership coach, a certified professional resume writer, and ex-recruiter. So I have seen a lot of resumes. I've written a lot of resumes. I've reviewed and screened a lot of resumes. And I know what I like to see, which is a subjective one like way of viewing resumes and what I would normally look for. But I also know what other people like to see, because I know that the resume reading is a subjective experience. And so I really am always going after, what do the majority of people want to see, and how can we write a resume for that majority? Because if you try and write a resume for an individual's opinion, you will go crazy because everyone has a slightly different opinion about the resume. So I do have some questions that were sent in ahead of time, and I even put them up as banners so that we can get started while people join us, and while they and you write in your questions into the comments. So the first one, and this is funny because in the Find Your Dream Job program, which is my group coaching membership, we do coaching every Thursday, and someone was struggling with this just last week. And so I thought it was super interesting that I got another question about this specifically. So I think this is something that's on people's mind quite often. And the actual question is, I'm struggling to get my resume down to one page. Can you give me some tips on what I can cut out? So my tip is you don't cut it all out. So less than 10% of recruiters want to see a one-page resume. So I don't quite know where this urban myth has perpetuated itself, that a one-page resume reigns supreme and that's what everyone should be going after, because it doesn't line up with the stats and what we see. And what we actually see is, we see that 3/4 of recruiters and hiring managers want to see a resume that is in alignment with your level of experience. And they actually don't even have a limit on that. So if you are an executive level individual who's been working for 20 years, they kind of don't mind seeing 3 pages because they want to see your progression there. Now, if you are an entry level, new grad, and you have 3 pages, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So we want a resume that aligns with what you bring to the table. And the problem that I see when we try and force our experience onto one page when it doesn't make sense is we end up going too high level. And when we are too high level with our resume, it does not get past applicant tracking systems, because applicant tracking systems are looking for details. They're looking for keywords and key phrases that show that you can do the job. And then the same with the recruiter. The recruiter doesn't want like some high level sense of what you could maybe do, because if you could maybe do the job, they are certainly not picking up the phone. They have other people that they can call. They want to see that you can do the job. So if you can't get your experience all to one page, then I encourage you to expand it to that 2 pages and see what happens there, because I bet you will get more interview requests once you get to that 2 pages. Okay, so for anyone who's just joined us, welcome to the Job Search Q&A Resume Edition. Please drop your questions in the comments so that I can answer all of the questions that you have about resumes, even cover letters and LinkedIn. I'm answering some questions now that have been sent in to me prior to this, but happy to answer any of the questions that you have. Anyone else? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. Anyone else sort of struggle with this whole concept of the 1 page, or how long is your resume currently? Let me know in the comments below. It's interesting. Sometimes I do write 1 pagers because I also think from a perspective of a reader. And when you think about the psychology of a reader and a skimmer, there are times when your resume just might go on to like the tiniest little bit on the 2nd page. And then we do want to, Deanna's is 2 pages. Then we definitely do want to try and get it onto 1 page, because nothing is the worst. And it just seems incomplete when it's like the tiniest little bit. And here are some formatting tips in case this individual does have that. Some formatting tips for that is to do narrow margins. And personally, my subjective preference is narrow margins anyway, because I feel that it gives the right amount of white space. I find the normal margins almost give a little bit too much white space. So I prefer the narrow anyway. And that can immediately bring it up. It gives you so much more room. The other is, instead of using like the enter key to do spaces, is you use the layout mode in Word if you're using Word, because then you can set it to a specific amount. My favorite amount for most, like in between professional experience and the company name, or between the company name, job title, and the first bullet point or an opening paragraph in the work experience, is 6. And then that gives you that right amount of white space, but maybe condenses it a little bit. So if your resume happens to be sneaking onto another page, this also works if it's sneaking onto the 3rd page. This is how you can shorten it without actually losing any of the content. You know, these are formatting tips. We're not losing any of the content, because we need that content there to get you past the applicant tracking system. Okay, next question. Now, don't forget, if you have a question, to let me know. Now, this question is about cover letters. And I know that, you know, cover letters, a lot of people hate them. And this person, like, it was shortened to this week. I hate writing cover letters. Do I really need one? And I get it, because what we tend to think we need to do is we feel like we need to customize the cover letter for each and every job. And that doesn't have to happen, because here are the stats. 30-ish% of like resume readers, so that's recruiters and hiring managers, read the cover letter. Not many. So like, you're wasting an hour of your time for like a 30%, not even 50% chance someone's going to read it. No, thank you. But here is the kicker. 3/4 of those same people expect to see a cover letter. They want to see the cover letter. They may not read it, but they want to see that you have done your due diligence and sent one in. which is why I recommend writing a foundational cover letter. And so let me just pull this up here. I am going to drop the link to the Engaging Cover Letter YouTube. Now, if you happen to be watching this as a replay, then what I recommend you doing is just going to this link that we will add in after the fact. But here is the link to that, because I talk about how I like to approach cover letters. And that's a great question, Deanna. So how I like to approach cover letters, which is like a foundational cover letter. So to me, a cover letter doesn't have to sell you into a job. It can just talk about you. You can just showcase you, because the purpose of a cover letter is to get a hiring manager excited to meet with you. And in my experience, reading resumes and cover letters with hiring managers, they only read them if they are a yes or a maybe. Like if they're a no, they're not going to read it. And here's the other thing is people think like they do it in order, like you read the cover letter and then you read the resume. That very rarely happens. Usually you read the resume and then you decide if you're going to read the cover letter. And so if they're a yes, they're already a yes. So let's get them excited to meet you. If they're a maybe, then let's, instead of trying to convince them to be a yes, let's just get them excited to meet you, because that's going to have them become a yes. And so you do that by writing a cover letter that is all about you and what you bring to the table. So for the tips and tricks on how to actually do that, head on and to that YouTube that I've linked below. I should have actually written in there. I wonder if I can edit it. Maybe I can edit it later. So I can put that engaging cover letter, or if you're watching the replay, head up there. Okay. So I'm going to show this question from Deanna before I get to any other questions. Should you exclude experience from your resume that is more than 20 years old? And this is the worst and best kind of question. And the worst because the answer is the worst. It depends. So super helpful. I know. But it really does depend on the types of positions you're looking for and the types of progression that they're wanting to see. So if you're looking for a leadership role that requires progression, and it states that in the job posting, then we do want to show you rising up through the ranks. Now, we might not have a ton of details for all of our older positions. We might just have them as a collection, like previous experience includes company name, job title, dates. And the dates are even optional. You can take off the dates if you want. And then you just have all your previous kind of like boom, boom, boom with no bullet points, no explanation, just company name and job title to capture that experience. But I think the general consensus, and this is sort of a controversial thing, whether or not it should be more than 10 years old or 15 years old or 20 years old, to me, generally around the 15-ish year mark. 10 years, if you have 15 or 20 years, feels like not enough experience. Like think about it, 10 years ago, which is like mind blowing, is 2014. Like it doesn't feel that long ago. Like 20 years ago is 2004. We're not even getting into the 90s here. So we do want to show your career and what you've done. We also, this has happened to me where you see 10 years of experience on the resume. And so you're expecting someone different to walk through the door that you're interviewing versus the person who has 20 years of experience. That's a big age difference. And this is where ageism can happen, for sure. But also it's just like oh, this isn't what I pictured. This isn't what I expected, which is not a way that you want an interviewer to start an interview. And I'm rambling here because there's so much gray and like specificity with this. So I would say 15 years is probably the amount that you want to be showing. And I think anything 10 to 15 years on, maybe 20. If you're going for leadership roles, I would probably do 20. If you're going for leadership roles, you do it in that way that I was suggesting, where it's like line after line versus with bullet points and everything. That way we're not getting into a 5-page resume. I hope that helps. Anyone else have questions? Please drop them in the comments. I am here to answer all of your questions about resumes and cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, like all the marketing document sort of thing, so that you can get more interviews, get more recruiters coming to find you, and like finding your dream job. Like really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And I don't even know where you're from or where you're watching from, so please let me know as well. Okay, next question. Pre-sent one in. So this actual is, I know I'm supposed to talk about my accomplishments on my resume, but I can't figure anyone's out that have numbers. I don't have any accomplishments with numbers. What should I do? And I think this comes from the concept of you need to quantify your accomplishments, meaning you need to say like reduce costs by 10%, or increased revenue by $200,000 year over year. Like you feel like you need to have the numbers. And yes, numbers are nice, but not all accomplishments are numbers based. And sometimes we don't even have access to those numbers. We don't really know what those numbers are, or we plumb forgot them, which happens, and that's okay. But we can qualify our accomplishments. We can say increased revenue by, you don't have to even say how much, decrease costs by, you don't even need to say how much. But there are also all of the accomplishments that we do that don't always have a number associated with it. So we can talk about like a champion a culture of collaboration. There's not always a number attached to that. Or we can talk about empowering our team to realize their goals. There's not really a number associated with that. So we can think about the things and the impact that we've had, and we don't, and we can think beyond the impacts that lead to some sort of number quantifiable result. And that's okay. That's more than okay. Like there are only certain roles that really need those numbers, or ideally would have those numbers. But there are a lot of positions where we don't have metrics for every single thing. And also, we are human beings. Our impact is always more than numbers. So I highly encourage you to think about the difference you made, to think about the lives you've made better, like internally, externally, the people that you've worked with, and what they might say you have done for them or for the team. I want you to think about even times you had to do your jobs on steroids, meaning you were set an impossible goal and you like just made it, or you just went over a little bit, or you had like 3 projects all on the go, all equal priority, and you somehow were able to complete it. Like those are all things that are goals. I mean, accomplishments. They're all goal worthy. They're all something you should be celebrating, and you can celebrate that in your resume. I hope that helps with that one. Okay, any other questions? I know resumes usually have more questions. I can't wait to hear what you guys have. What are you guys struggling with? Do you have a resume that you just can't seem to write? Do you have one that for some reason just isn't getting interviews and you don't know? Have you gotten advice from someone that really you don't know is right, and so you just want to hear about it? Do you like, there's so many more different things. Okay, I do have another one that I just haven't gotten a chance to write down yet, and haven't. So it's all about employment gaps. I haven't been working for the past 18 months, 1 year on mat leave, 6 months looking. How do I show that on my resume? Okay, So I'm going to add this new banner to show. Okay, so I don't know the particulars about this person's gap. So technically, this might be considered an 18-month gap. It might not be. Because if you've been on mat leave as a permanent employee, then your end date is when you stopped being an employee, not the time you went on mat leave. So if this individual, and I didn't get a chance to do any follow-up, if this individual had gone on mat leave and then was laid off at some point near the end of it, then you would put that end date, and then it would just be 6 months looking, which is like job search. So you don't need to show that on your resume at all. If you were a contract employee or laid off before your mat leave, and then you've been 18 months off, honestly, this is kind of an easy situation. And so if anyone else has an employment gap that they want to talk about, feel free to let me know what that is in the comments, and we can talk about your situation more specifically. Because in this case, considering if you happen to be living in Canada, you can just say you've been on mat leave for 18 months, like a parental leave, maternity leave, employment sabbatical. You can say that because in Canada, it's 18 months. Now, if you happen, and I know for a fact based off of where this person lives in Canada. So that would be my recommendation, would just be to have that. If you happen to be living in the States and this is your situation, well, you wouldn't have been on 1 year mat leave anyways. It would not work. But if you do have a gap on your resume, you need to include it on your resume in most cases. So I would say 5 years ago, if your gap was 5 years ago, we don't necessarily need to have it on there. We don't need to account for every single thing like 5+ years ago. So I would not worry about it then. But if it's been in the past 5 years, you do need to address it, because the recruiter is going to think, oh, I wonder what happened. And they're not going to give you the courtesy of picking up the phone to give you a call to ask you. Like, unless you are an exceptional candidate and they don't have anyone else, in all likelihood, you're not getting that benefit of the doubt. So you want to address it on the resume, and you can do it in a variety of ways. And it's completely personal and up to you in terms of how you do it. So you can talk about if it's a family leave, a parental leave, a caregiving leave. You can talk about it from that point of view. And you can have a single bullet point explaining what you did, or no bullet points at all is also no big deal. If you have had an incredibly long job search, like a job search that's over a year, then I would really start to seek out some volunteer work, where we can then add that to the work experience, and similar volunteer work to the work you have done, or start considering doing some freelance work if that's at all possible, so that we can get that on the resume. I think that strengthens. Also, when you've been in a job search for a year plus, you really start to feel like you have completely lost control over your career. And that no one's going to hire you, that is pointless, that like you start to get really jaded. And so what that volunteer work does, what that freelance work does, is it kind of brings you back to yourself a little bit, because you're engaging, you're doing work. And you feel like, yeah, you've got this. You feel like you have that control that is so necessary in a job search, because the longer you're off, the more likely you are to just pepper a whole bunch of resumes around, and hopefully something sticks, and then it doesn't, and then you use it more against you. Like, it's just, oh. And then I've interviewed people who have had long employment gaps, and they get really jaded and angry in interviews. And it's, no one wants to hire someone who's angry at like them for the recruitment process. And that's not to say the recruitment process isn't broken. It really is. But that's kind of a beside the point, because you still need to find a job, and you can't fix the recruitment process while you're looking for a job. It's up to the people inside. But the platform for trying to change it is not in the interview, and it's not on a resume. So I think if you've had a long job search, trying to get some of that in would be helpful. And it would be helpful. You could still leave the year and start it from now. That doesn't matter. And you can talk about it being an employment sabbatical. And that leads me to the times when we just take off. So there are lots of individuals who get laid off and who decide to take a year or 2 years off. There are people who leave their jobs to go travel. There are people who leave their jobs to try and start a business, or just because to write a novel, or because they are burnt out. So there are a lot of reasons why people may leave their work, or have been laid off and decide to keep staying off. And that is up to you and how you want to showcase that. So I have seen employment sabbatical is used very regularly. I've used it a lot, just even in this answer. And I think that's because it is something that's very accessible, easy to understand. It's vague enough. But you could also talk about like world traveler or aspiring novelist, or like just a career reinvention or a self-discovery sabbatical. Like you can be as specific or as general as you want to be. But why it's important. So it's important because it doesn't matter so much that you've taken the time off. It doesn't matter to everyone so much why you've taken the time off. There are always going to be people who have a negative association with an employment gap. And we are not trying to convince them otherwise, because we are wasting our breath. They are like convinced that you will have lost it. You're lost your edge, that you will take too much time to get onboarded and to get up to speed. You won't be able to hit the ground running. Like all of these stupid, silly things. They're going to believe that. Let's not waste our breath trying to convince them otherwise, because there are a lot of people out there who it doesn't matter to. And those are the people who are going to hire you. But if they have that question of why is there this gap here, you won't even get an opportunity to show them the impact that you can have. So showcasing your employment gap on your resume is so vital for you to get in front of the people who want to hire you. And we've had people like my clients have been hired after 2-3 year long gaps, after year-long gaps, after a 25-year-long gap. Like there are 9 years. There are so many individuals that have had these seemingly like impossible to overcome gaps that were not that impossible to overcome. It was just all about finding that right person, that right company that saw their value. Okay. Off my soapbox for that one. Any other questions? If not, I will close off this resume Q&A. But if you have any other questions about resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn, drop them below. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you grab my freebie, the latest one that I have developed. Let me just pull it up here. So it's the Find Your Dream Job Guide. This is a free instant download for you. And what it is it goes through how to find your dream job. But it goes through like all of the pitfalls that we tend to see in a job search. So I generally see 5 massive mistakes that people tend to make. And I go through this to show you what it is, why it's a problem, how you know this is happening to you, and then the fix, how to fix it. Sorry about that. Because that is the key, is we need to know how to fix these problems. And then Oh, you haven't. Okay. Hi, Shannon. If you had any questions, drop them in. Be happy to answer them. Um, and this will be replayed. The replay will live in YouTube for forever. But then I also talked to you in the guide, the process that I created back in my first time I got laid off, or the one time I got laid off in 2009. I had a really bad few job searches leading up to it, leading up to that point. And I really did not want that to happen again, especially because I got laid off. Like, the world was ending. I was told by everyone, including the Ministry of Labor, that I was probably looking at a good 10 to 12 months of being off of work. So I was like, okay, this is going to be bad. So I created a process on how I was going to find a new job. And that process has evolved into how to find this dream job. And so I walk you through that as well. So grab that guide there. It is free. And then once you've downloaded it, you also have an option to go watch a 35-minute workshop where I kind of go through it in some more detail, but also some people are like verbal learners, or audio learners. So it'd be nice to hear it as well. I like to kind of get the all of them, the audio and visual learners, all in one. But I don't see any new questions. Well, thank you for anyone who sent the questions in. Thank you to the questions that I had. If you're watching the replay and you had a question that wasn't answered, let me know in the comments and I'll answer it down there. But let me get rid of this banner. How do I do that again? Hide. There we go. There, I'm back. Back to just the Sarah Grotto. Okay, Shannon has a question. Good. I have a very broad question. When I'm perusing a specific field, how much tailoring is truly necessary? It is necessary. So I'm curious, like, are you talking about a different field than the one you're in? Because that also helps inform the question. But really, it is important. I'm going to add this so we can see it. Because again, we need to get through that applicant tracking system, and the applicant tracking system needs to be able to see that you can do the job. And a recruiter needs to see that you can do the job. And I see a lot of people who try and have just one resume for lots of different types of jobs or industries within the current field. Okay. Where we are generalizing too much. And so you're diluting your message. And so no one really sees you anywhere because they can't see you in the job because you have tried to make it seem like you can fit all of the things. So we do need to be specific. Now, that doesn't mean you can't write a foundational resume for that specific field, which is your current field, and just tweak that for every single job posting. Now, what I generally see is you write a foundational resume or you have someone write it for you. And it generally takes from the first few times about 20 to 30 minutes to maybe tweak that resume just because like it's new. But then it really gets quick where you can eventually do it in 5 minutes as you're just changing certain keywords and skills to make sure that they are like the ones that they are using in the job posting. But that's it. You do not have to rewrite a resume for every single job posting. No way at all. But if you do have another field that you're also interested in, you should have a separate resume for that field. It will make your life easier. And then it's better to have 2 specific resumes than 1 generalized resume. Did that answer your question, Shannon? I hope so. Super sunny in where I am. I'm in just outside of Burlington. Shannon says, I am currently a document coordinator and I've had so many different types of jobs, but I love my learning and development field. and I would like to aim for a role that is more like a learning and development specialist. Yes, that is super helpful. So yeah, you want to get it very heavy as much as possible within the realm of what you have done, L&D specific. And I don't always recommend education in L&D. I would recommend looking into some courses and certificates to get those keywords onto your resume. And you don't have to start with a big diploma or a 2-year certificate. You honestly can start by using LinkedIn Learning and using some of the courses there. There's also something X that you can use for it's like the universities in edX, EDX. It does a lot of like Harvard and Cornell, like a lot of the major universities, UFT, that will do like 6-week certificate programs. But LinkedIn Learning you can do for free through your library. edX, you can do most of them for free. You just don't get a certificate at the end. And if you want a certificate, then you have to pay, but it's like so cheap. So I would recommend starting there. And then once you're in the role, maybe then start getting some more education. But that's sort of like a different conversation altogether. But wanted to get that. But I'm glad that was super helpful. Okay. If there are no other questions, I really appreciate you lunching and learning with me today, taking some time out on your Monday to, you're welcome. Sorry, another question from Shannon. I was thinking of going to an L&D conference this summer. How would you show those on your resume? I would show it, you do education and professional development, and then you would show it in there. And you can even list the different specific courses or seminars that you attended in that conference. So thank you, Deanna. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your Monday. And again, if you're watching the replay and I didn't answer a question, just drop it in the comments and I'll answer it there. Have a great day, everybody, and a great week. I'll see you probably in a couple of months where I'll do another one. I don't know where I'm going to do it. Maybe here, still on YouTube, maybe again on LinkedIn, maybe on Facebook, maybe Instagram. Who knows? Let me know where you need to do it. Okay, take care. Bye.